Esports panel, and to my left, I have the amazing Lisa Watts from 121. I have Brad Atkins from, which one do I call you now? VR Master League. I have Frank Ishitaki, who is former World of Poker, plus has done Ultimate GG, and is now with Allied Esports. And we have Ryan Birmingham again on Skype. I wish you were here, Ryan. It's really annoying you're not. But anyway. Okay, so first of all, Frank, let's start with you. Can you give us a bit of background on what you produced in VR esports?
Well, as you mentioned, everything I've done, has pretty much been in the 2D world. I have I've got 360 and VR experience where I EP'd for Holler Media a while back, but it's pretty much, exclusively in the 2D world. That said, I'm grateful to be here today and learn from a lot of the people here. And, so looking forward to doing, VR esports. I think, I'll make it quick. One of the challenges for me personally, seeing how it all works together, is it's tough enough making 2D esports, so introducing the VR, element to it is certainly going to be it's going to be awesome to figure out.
Yeah, and actually Frank is kind of selling himself short because he's actually produced a huge tournaments, regular esports tournaments. So we can all actually learn a lot from him. Okay, Brad, over to you.
Hi, I'm here with VR Master League. We are actually a pretty small community-run esports organization. Right now, we mostly feature VR FPS games such as Onward, Contractors, Pavlov, some of your more popular titles like that. Though we are interested in looking at other games as well, Echo games, anything else outside the realm of VR FPS. But yeah, so we're a community-run organization. All of our employees, if you will, are all volunteer. I myself am an administrator with the organization and also a caster. I have a couple of my casting friends here with me as well to help represent us. But yeah, we're more on the community-run side of things. So we're all about the player itself rather than and the entire world of VR in general and VR esports. Just spreading that is our main goal.
Great. And Lisa, tell me about you and your past and your future, I guess. And Back to the Future, and
so my name is Lisa Watts. I have just formed a new company called 121 Immersive. I was at Intel for 25 years. I left there in the middle of February to head out on my own. While there, I had the honor and privilege of being kind of a one-woman army and working with ESL and Oculus to actually create the first VR tournament league, which is on this lovely jersey sitting next to me, which is, thank you very much for wearing it. So very, very proud of my Intel roots and what we did there. It was from the grassroots on up, daily, weekly meetings, getting that tournament set up. We were waiting for beta code to drop from Echo Arena. I had a great idea that I still need someone to do. I'm going to call Chris back up, but we were, and those guys, we really wanted to be able to expand out the ability to have peanut gallery in VR viewing of these tournaments. I think that is coming, and I heard a couple people are working on that, so really looking forward to be able to do that. So in that role, I was able to produce a number of both narrative as well as esports titles. Was able to work with Samsar here to do the Ready Player One content of H's Basement and H's Garage. So now I'm taking it on the road independently, partnering with a lot of you in the room. And hopefully we'll be down here in the Bay Area quite a bit. Don't ask me about my son because I will talk your ear off and it'll be totally irritating. So just a fair warning on that. But yeah, thank you for having me on the panel. Looking forward to what's next.
And we also have Ryan again on Skype. Hi, Ryan, Virtual Athletic League.
Thank you, everybody.
He's there being very busy.
I've been following the action from the Facebook Arcade Owners Group, so thank you, Kevin, and also Herman, for posting the fixtures today. That everyone looks quite lovely over there.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, actually, Lisa, you were the first person, I think, that put on a VR tournament, correct? At Oculus Connect, maybe 4 or 3. I remember it pretty well, because I remember the really nice drinks, actually, that you put on too.
You have to give that credit to Chris McKelvey at Oculus. He did a fantastic job with that event. I think I'm not sure anything has even achieved that level of awesomeness even to this date. I know they are definitely bringing it home relative to the VR League is concerned, so big shout out to them. But actually, one of my coworkers at Intel, Brett Branch and Mark Subotnik, some of you may know them, had actually started just prior to my involvement in actually partnering with Microsoft in the Microsoft stores, kind of for the first tournament for the Unspoken, if you guys remember that. And what we did is we kind of just picked the ball up from there and ran with it relative to bringing Intel on as a big time sponsor for the first and second season. That league is now, gotten wings and is on to the next track. But yeah, that was, there's a huge amount of challenges relative to VR in a open space, and I know we're getting much better at that. We've obviously seen a transition to studio-produced events as well, which I think is fantastic, and I think at that time when we can bring in first-person, peanut gallery viewers that can throw on their headset and actually be in the stadium and stands for some of that stuff, that's going to just make it even more awesome.
Yeah, so I think actually, I think it's a pretty well-known thing that ESL are partnering with Focal Point and Rewind, actually, and they just won a government grant out of the UK for £4 million, which translates probably to about $4 million nowadays. But anyway, with Brexit, I had to throw that in there. But what that is that's going to be a live streaming, actually, where you will be able to throw on your headset and be in-game as well as out of game and watching it as well. So that's going to be very interesting to see. And I think they're doing that actually with the Dota 2 tournament. So, and that has been actually, you can actually go on there and read their white paper of what they're actually going to be doing. But I think that will be quite a big turning point. In terms of budgets, Frank, I know you've dealt with massive, massive budgets. But I mean, what kinds of budgets do you see, how do you think you could put together, like, say, a VR esports tournament? And then, obviously, I'm going to ask all you guys as well, from kind of low to high, what do you think you could do either in a space or in an arena, or give me some idea of the budgets that we're thinking about.
First off, whatever the budget is, I never go over budget.
You're hired.
No, and to your point, I've produced and directed, esports tournaments where, the budget on the low end, maybe 250, 300K, and then upwards of, 2.5 to 3M. And, and then you have, obviously, there are a bunch of different considerations when it comes to, venue and that type of, when you're, also too, what your goals are, right, for the broadcast itself and what kind of, reach and basically, the scale of the tournament. One of the things that I was grateful to, make friends, with Bradley here and hear about what they're doing, with that kind of community-based, effort for a league. What I love about that, and with respect to budgets, is that you look at people like this who are working and there's blood and sweat, and you realize it doesn't have to cost all of that. Like we can make really high quality content if we want to do it. So if I could be any more nebulous about it, like that's kind of where I'll go, because there's, as everyone in the room knows, there's a range, to what you want to do. It just depends on, on the goals and who you've got to answer to.
Yeah, so I guess, Ryan, what kind of budgets do you look at when you're running your league?
Yeah,
your
so
tournament?
It may be helpful to give just a bit of background. Is there any echo, by the way?
You're good.
You're good.
Okay. So it may be helpful just to give a bit of background on how we started. So we started ultra low budget. So I think, just opening up the arcade, we'd spend about 80,000, but then kind of VR esports was just something we started to do on the weekends. So we're talking like the price of Nintendo 64 and some Little Caesars pizza. And so, $20, you start to add the math up for per person per pizza slice. But this was back in August of 2016, and those were fantastic. So, we just have we get like 30 or 40 people in a room, and just the energy was super fantastic, just doing those Space Pirate Trainer events. We had a co-founder join us from the Void pretty shortly thereafter. And then we got into the Boost VC Accelerator, which is a fantastic VR and also cryptocurrency, mostly based accelerator in the Bay Area. So we got a little bit of venture capital funding. And, we were running some of our first national events essentially, for free or low cost. We ran a small one for 3 arcades, and we ran 10 arcades. And, as we got into Beat Saber, we went with press for 50 arcades, and ended up being 168 arcades in 40 countries. So our estimates were upward of north of 2,000 participants. So, what we found is, budgets for VR, particularly in gaming, are not huge at the moment. So, anything under 100K will do it, but, our real joy, I've seen, from 3K to 100K in the VR space currently, just real world figures. And, but a lot of it is still really community driven. For example, we work heavily with arcades, and it's that magic partnership with arcades that makes it happen. So kind of a long answer, but that's been our experience with budgets.
So I want to hear any kind of tricks to producing the best kind of tournaments. I'm talking regular as well as VR. Any kind of pitfalls? Tell me some funny stories. Any players get lost in the wilderness? Things like that.
I guess if I can make a comment on the previous question quickly, because I think it's important. I think where big brands are, I can have a little more freedom in saying this because I'm not at Intel anymore, but where big brands kind of get a little twisted up in the VR space is they're very much interested in trying to replicate the success that's happened in 2D games. And so there's a couple of things to keep in mind, especially when you're producing an event. Number one is that there's not a crossover in players for the most part. We're growing brand new players. These guys here, Sonia and others are in the front row. We're growing brand new players into gaming that really haven't done gaming before. And I think that the first-party nature of VR really opens it up to a broader range of participants and players. So personally, I couldn't sit and I'm terrible at 2D games. Put me in a VR headset, you better watch your back because I am a badass, right? It's just that first, it's that first-party, hand-eye coordination aspect is so different, but that is where the opportunity is as well. And so you have to kind of keep that in mind. Your profile of player does not cross over one-to-one with what you're used to seeing in 2D games, right? So that's the number one thing to keep in mind. Number two is that you have to think if you're trying to grow, the reason why we called the VR League the VR Challenger League in the first year is because it was basically kindergarten league, right? We wanted to see what was going to happen. And so the thought was as you grow, you kind of start with the amateur leagues, you kind of grow up to the kind of the collegiate leagues, and then eventually you'll get enough players and enough games and enough expertise that you can actually go for bigger money, et cetera. But to go for bigger money, you have to be able to have reach, right? So when you think about a big esports gaming production company, I mean, it is about, it's a media business now, right? All Blizzard, everybody's kind of a media company, right? They've got to sell advertising. They need those eyeballs to kind of pay the bills and pay the big paychecks. So you kind of have to think about that when you're producing from the ground up, right? And have some patience with VR. Relative to that, but also I think, as a community, we need to lean in on, stereoscopic 360 viewing, and not only that, but just, social viewing in VR for these tournaments to make them really pay off. But foundationally, because we need high-end experiential locations, having location-based VR arcades have tournaments that actually connect to other arcades, and then have, you know, those ladder up in the system to something bigger that, you know, Frank or someone might put on. I think that's really, really important. I see a ton of fragmentation, but guys, there's plenty to go around, and it's really important to have, you know, all those guys that were infrastructure players, so everybody band together on a couple of different titles and see if we can't float all boats, because it's going to take a while. So the more we all partner together to float all boats and get some of these titles up, and with the more we'll be able to get more players, and I think that's going to be the secret to success for everyone.
Yeah, can I interject for just a minute? You know, I just have to say I totally agree. With Archangel, we ran that at the same time as the VR Master League, and we were able to get out some of the winners to TwitchCon in San Jose. And then it's been a real cool thing. Shout out to VR Junkies in Arizona. A couple of their top players that just won our Space Junkies tournament have now entered some of the competitions with VR ESL, and they're doing pretty well top 10 at the moment.
That's great. And what about you?
What about me?
have
As far
anything
as the
to add on
budgeting
that?
concerns, you know, being a community-run league, I work with 0 to no budget, basically.
Okay, someone come in and help him sponsor here, okay?
Someone please give me money.
It's like,
No,
you know.
But we're blessed in the VRML to have such a passionate group of players throughout the VR space, whether it be with our Onward players or our upcoming Contractors League with that new title that's coming out. Our players are just so passionate about VR in general. They're not just passionate about their specific game that they choose to be competitive in, whether that's Onward or Contractors, what have you. They just want to see the growth of VR. They know what this is. This is the next revolution, right? Like, we're building the next revolution of competitive gaming. We're building something that's going to be way more entertaining to watch, because let's face it, seeing me get down on my belly and have to hop back up or jump over something is going to be way more exciting than watching guys sit behind a bank. Yeah, which is a lot more entertaining than watching people behind a bank of monitors. I mean, come on, right? It's like watching someone watch TV. We don't want to do that, but yeah. So I come from the world where I've got 0 budget, but we have such an amazing cast. You know, Noman here joining me. He's one of our casters. We do, you know, community shoutcasting. We've actually stepped up our production values quite a lot. You can check us out at twitch.tv/Onward Master League if you want to check out some of our work. But yeah, I mean, we do it with little to 0 budget, but to me, it's just the passion. And like you said, we don't get the one-to-one crossover of your traditional esports players, but because a lot of our titles are focused around first-person shooters, it's a very easily translatable thing for people to get into. We've even had some of the bigger YouTubers and streamers like Shroud and some of the other big esports competitors in the 2D scene start to come in and dabble around stream 3D or VR titles, and that's done a lot for helping us grow. And you know, that's only to continue in the future. But I mean, no matter whether you're putting it on with a $350,000 budget or a $0 budget, it's all going to come down to the passion in the people that you have around you. If you don't have the passion in the folks that you've employed or brought around you, then you're just going to end up with a bad production, whether you had $1 million to spend or 50 cents to spend.
Well, and don't forget our past, right? We started, you know, esports really started, you know, 13, 14, even further back than that with, you know, basement parties, LAN parties, and it just grew from there. And I think we have a lack of patience sometimes in the transition. And, you know, with the knowledge that we're growing a brand new player base, you know, I think we can get it done sooner, but it's still going to take a minute.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, I think I'm always a person that's always said I'd rather be done right than be done fast, right? So I'd rather us take our time and really put our heads together collectively to push this forward and to continue improving this sort of stuff. So absolutely, I agree with that.
Just going back to broadcast, you know, did you broadcast, right?
Yeah, we do weekly, daily streams almost covering all our weekly Onward matches, yeah.
And Frank, obviously you've broadcast huge things before with a massive broadcast studio.
Yep.
I'm assuming yours is smaller.
Yes, now I have worked with ESL. I did do analyst work for them at OC5 for Onward. So I have worked with higher level production as well, but as far as running that production.
Right,
no.
and are there any like hurdles or any kind of pitfalls or anything else that people should avoid when they're broadcasting?
Well,
and streaming this stuff?
yeah, I mean it's a great question because there's a bunch of great things that you guys both touched on, and I think one of the things that I wanted to come back to was, you mentioned that at the end of the day, the brands and the publishers, there's a media play, right? And we need to, there's advertising that we need to account for. I mean, and in order to aggregate like those eyeballs, right, that we need to be able to pay the bills. I know this comes back to one of the things like I had said, I think it's difficult enough to do that in the 2D world, let alone introducing the VR component to it. For the non-endemic, everyone in this room, right? We get it. We love this. But they don't get it yet. And for them to see you crawling on your belly, like they don't quite know what that means. Now, you have a caster friend here, and I think part of that is to make sure that, at the end of this, like I'm just a content person. I like, I tell stories, and as I'm trying to tell the story, and especially like now introducing, say, like VR to esports, tell the story of what the competitors are going to and why the people out there should care. This harkens all the way back to my early days. I mean, I made my bones on the World Poker Tour. High stakes poker was it. I was there in the beginning in 2002, when there was no such thing. And they're closing poker rooms and casinos across the US. Like that's what was going on in 2002. And then the big craze happened. And what happened then was we figured out how to show the whole cards. I mean, that was it. It was literally just that little camera where we could see, and instantly the audience got it. They understood what was going on. They could totally identify with the players, and the tension was there. And it's the tension of why do we care? And once that started happening, then it was people in their homes and from all ages and backgrounds who'd never even played a hand of poker. They got it. They're in there in the moment with the player, and that's like my challenge, right? And the people in content is to figure out how to translate what you guys do and why they should care. Like I care, right? But translating it, like visually to them to tell that story. I mean, that's it. And that's what I encourage, like everyone here as we're all doing this together, and yeah, and all all the boats and ships can rise together, is to help people like me like tell that story in an authentic way, right? In a pitch perfect authentic way that guys like you in the community know how to do. So. Yeah.
And actually, just going to that, just one last thing on this. I was just wondering, in regards to social media and ancillary content that you can produce for the tournaments that can actually start promoting the players as well as the tournaments and just getting people out there a little bit more than they are already. Frank and Lisa, obviously you've done traditional as well as, are there any kind of hints to promoting the brand, or not necessarily the game, I'm talking about the tournament or the players or the league?
I definitely think that the player promotion is really critical, because I think, as with any sort of marketing or any sort of storytelling, it's the relationship with other people that people gravitate to. So, I do think, from here we are in Microsoft's, big capture studio. One of the things that I don't see from a marketer perspective, which I had to pay attention to at Intel from a storytelling point of view, if you kind of think about, and I'll harken back to Ready Player One, that connection between the real life person and the avatar they choose to be in VR, I think is something that marketers and social media folks should be thinking to glom onto, and also that ability to, have a little bit of personalization. Doesn't have to be a lot, but just, whether it's the number, or whether it's the name, or whether it's the whatever, Sonia can talk about that, relative to Echo, right? Having that name out there so that you can be called out and have that, having your real world pose with your avatar. I mean, those are simple tricks that you can do, because as in the poker example, you need to make that tie. And the interesting thing about VR is there's this, is the figuring out how to do the juxtaposition between what's happening in the physical world and in the virtual world at the same time. Because when we did the OC4 tournament, there was some fantastic stuff happening. People in the air, on the ground, flipping upside. I mean, it's like, what's his name who plays upside down? Yeah. So, people like just blows people's mind. They can't even think about playing it right side up versus just upside down. So it is the shoutcasters, it is the visuals, it is trying to, pull those game characters out of game so that you can have 2D relationships with them, et cetera. I think, there's some tricks and low-hanging fruit, but then there's also things where technology is not quite where we need it to be yet. So we need to work on both those things.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, with us, it's all about that guerrilla marketing and advertising. We have our guys and gals, our players, our teams. Some of them have individual Twitter accounts and things like that to kind of start building their esports brand, if you will. They want to be the next Cloud9 or the next Optic Gaming or what have you. So they're starting to build those brands now. Like our Globochem team, for example, they're an excellent example. They're a top-tier team that put 20 or 30 hours into their game every week together, and it shows when they go to play. They're very competitive, but we try and engage our audience, and that's actually something we've been trying to improve upon in the last few weeks is more social media and engagements. And so with that, we've been running giveaways and things like that. So we actually just wrapped up a giveaway where we did a few $50 Steam gift cards in order to just get more people, interested in VR or in VR esports or even just in VR Master League in general. So that works pretty well. We picked up a couple of hundred followers over, I think it was a 2 or 3 week giveaway period. So it was a good drive to improve the visibility of Onward as well as the VR Master League and VR esports, and I think that's a big part of it. You really just have to encourage your community and your fan base to just spread whatever they can. If they stream or if they record, grab those clips, throw them on Twitter, throw them on your Facebook, throw them on Discord, throw them everywhere. Yeah. Just put it out there. The more stuff that we have out there, the more eyes can see it.
Tag Frank.
And tag Frank. Tag everyone. I mean, I know, being relatively newer in the VR community, and relatively new on Twitter, but, I'm able to follow all of these guys and gals that are in here, and they'll follow you back, and, you can trade tech tips and all that stuff. So it's been really fantastic. So I think we just need to keep that going in our VR community, and it's all coming up gold. You know what I mean?
And Frank, from your...
Oh,
sorry, Ryan, you go ahead.
Anyway, for us, Twitch's broadcasting is a little bit newer. I remember during our Beat Saber tournament, just to keep on going back to that, that was really exciting. We only lost out to Beer Saber as the #1 Twitch stream of the evening for Beat Saber. So we lost out to just some drunk people, and that's okay. And the internet told me I had a dad bod. But beyond that, I think it's been really exciting. I'm a huge proponent of just the mixed reality features that are coming out. So really key for us has been working with one of our partners, Live. And the amount of views that somebody can get using a mixed reality capture like Live or Mixcast has surpassed over the billions now, just in cumulative views. And so there's some serious magic in merging the real world and the VR world.
Yeah, and Frank, from your side of doing content from a 2D perspective, what has worked there, and what do you think would work kind of with these guys who are starting out with their leagues and also with their players, and Brad's a shoutcaster, and let's make him a star.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what Brad and his comrades represent to me. I mean, you guys are really, like, to me, the lifeblood. Like that's to me where it starts. And everyone loves a story. We used to talk about it when I was with Ultimate. The player journey. And where that starts, and this is like everyone that when they tune in, they're gonna get into the game. If they're a fan of the game, they'll immediately, like, visually they can tell what's going on. But again, we already have that. Like, those people are already gonna watch. We need to get those people who don't care, don't know what this is. And to me, that starts with people like this, right? Like the regular everyday player, and what they did to get here to this day. So.
Yeah, I mean, VR esports has given kids who 10 years ago were sitting on their couches playing Xbox saying, oh my God, I wish I could be playing Call of Duty professionally. And now we're giving these people the opportunity, like 10 years later, to say, oh my God, I'm a VR esports player. I'm a professional esports player now. And while the prize pools obviously aren't nearly as big as what we're seeing in Overwatch League and CSGO and things like that, these players are earning money, so it's giving them reasons to play and to fight and to train and compete. So, that's only positive in my opinion.
All right, so I think we're out of time, but I really want to thank Ryan for being on Skype when he's already running a tournament. I want to thank Lisa, Brad, and Frank, obviously, for coming here, and thank you all for listening.
Thanks, everybody.